Hi, my name is Svetlana Maslakova. I'm a professor at the University of Oregon's Marine Station, Oregon Institute of Marine Biology, located in the southern Oregon coast. In this study, we document for the first time species diversity and distribution in a phylum of marine invertebrates called ribbonworms or nemerteans in Oman, a country on the Arabian Peninsula. Nemerteans are predominantly marine worms with about 1,350 described species. They are unsegmented and lack appendages, and they are found ubiquitously in the world's oceans. The phylum is characterized by having an irreversible proboscis, which you can watch being shot out at the anterior end, and they use this proboscis to hunt and subdue their prey, which includes other worms, crustaceans, sometimes even fish. In some species, the proboscis is armed with a microscopic calcareous stylet, which allows them to inflict a wound and then secrete a venomous cocktail into the wound to paralyze and partially liquefy their prey. In some nemerteans, the proboscis may be branched. Perhaps they use it as a net. Although the phylum includes the longest extant animal on planet Earth, most species are fairly small and would fit into a standard petri dish. Nemerteans are generally fairly tricky to find because most species live cryptically, that is, well hidden among crevices of coral reefs, in algal mats, under rocks, or in soft sediments. We collected over 500 individual nemerteans during 3 expeditions to Oman, which focused on characterizing marine invertebrate diversity. We especially focused our attention on a particular type of habitat, which in other tropical parts of the world yields a lot of nemerteans. This is coral rubble. So we had to bring buckets and buckets of rubble up to the surface while scuba diving, and then soak the rubble in bins and buckets for many hours, allowing the water to slowly deoxygenate. We call this sweating the rubble. While the rubble is sweating, the worms tend to come up to the surface where we can pick them up with a pipette. These worms are generally negatively phototactic, that is, they hide from the light. So they tend to emerge after dark. Our sampling sites ranged from southern Oman, the region called Dhofar, to northern Oman, the region called Muscat, across one of the sharpest marine biogeographic boundaries in the world at Ras Al Had, separating the waters of the Gulf of Oman in the north from the waters of Arabian Sea in the south. The marine biota of Oman is really incredibly diverse and unusual, with very many endemic species, particularly in southern Oman. This is a very unusual region influenced by a seasonal upwelling. In this part of the world, you can find kelp and coral on a single dive. We found and DNA barcoded 107 nemertean species, and 98% of them were undescribed. So we had to give them temporary species names, such as Tetrastema sp. small 20 or Gorgonarhynchus sp. small 50, a combination of letters and numbers used to denote that the species is new but is not yet described. And this allows us, given these standardized names, allows us to track these species in databases and publications. What's remarkable, though, is that our sampling was fairly limited, both in the geographic scope as well as the types of habitats. And also, most of the species that we collected were rare. We only found 1 or 2 individuals of each, which suggests that with more sampling, we would discover as many as perhaps 200 more nemertean species in Oman. Previously, only 217 nemertean species have been documented from the entire Indo-West Pacific. But most of these species have not been genetically characterized or DNA barcoded, so it is difficult to connect those names to the modern standards of species descriptions and delineations. In contrast, over 300 Nemertean species are named from the European waters. And the European waters in general are an order of magnitude less diverse in terms of the marine biota compared to the Indo-West Pacific. This suggests that the global Nemertean diversity is probably an order of magnitude larger than is currently known. So the total number of species may be somewhere between 6,000 and 13 or 14,000 species. This highlights just how little we know about marine biodiversity in general. Nemerteans are just one phylum, but we think that they are representative of the state of knowledge of marine biodiversity more generally. Particularly, it highlights how little we know about marine biodiversity in the tropics and regions like the Indo-West Pacific. This also has implications for taxonomy. With this many newly discovered species and many more that remain undocumented, we can no longer afford to describe one species at a time in a manuscript that's several pages long. We must describe entire faunas at a time and keep individual descriptions short. Interestingly, we found a lot of spatial turnover in biodiversity across the Ras Al Had biogeographic boundary. We found 57 Nemertean species in the north, the Gulf of Oman region, and 63 Nemertean species in the south, and only 13 of those species were overlapping between the two regions. That is, they were found on both sides of the Ras Al Had boundary. This suggests that marine biota of Oman is not only rich and distinct from other parts of the world, but it's also regionally differentiated. Most people think that finding a new species is rare. That is simply not the case. While discovering a new species of monkey is unusual, most marine species on planet Earth remain undocumented. And this is especially true for the most biodiverse parts of the ocean, such as the tropical Indo-West Pacific. And this is especially true of organisms that are fairly small and live cryptically. Most of this biodiversity is associated with coral reefs, which are rapidly vanishing under pressure from climate change, overfishing, and pollution. The work of discovering and describing marine biodiversity has only just begun, and it is now more urgent than ever. My co-authors are Dr. Gustav Pauli, a curator of marine invertebrates at the Florida Museum of Natural History, Mira Cherneva, a PhD student at Moscow State University in Moscow, Russia, and Audrey Wong and Ethan Kahn, undergraduate research interns who worked with me on this project at the OIMB